Welcome to the AI Story Narrator channel.
In the sprawling metropolis of Havenwood, a city that buzzed with life by day and whispered with secrets by night, a quiet and introverted newcomer named Daniel found himself drawn into a sinister web of darkness and despair. Having recently moved to Havenwood for a fresh start, Daniel's social anxiety made it a daunting task to make new friends or acquaintances. He desperately craved connection, a sense of belonging, and an escape from the isolation he'd become accustomed to. Little did he know that his quest for companionship would lead him down a nightmarish path. One day, as he toiled away at his remote job in his dimly lit apartment, Daniel's phone buzzed with a message from his coworker, Emily. "Hey Daniel, we're having a get-together this weekend. It's movie night at my place. Would you like to join us?" Elated by the prospect of finally breaking free from his self-imposed solitude, Daniel agreed enthusiastically. The weekend couldn't come soon enough. As he arrived at Emily's apartment, a cozy, dimly lit space adorned with flickering candles and an eerie ambience, he was introduced to a group of her friends. Among them were Sarah, a cheerful and outgoing woman, Mark, a quiet but friendly man with a passion for film, and Emily's enigmatic cousin, Alex, who appeared to be the mastermind behind the evening's entertainment. Movie night kicked off with the promise of a classic horror film, but it quickly took an unexpected turn. Emily, with a sly grin, announced that they would be watching a series of independent films created by her cousin and some film school acquaintances, emphasizing that they needed feedback for a school assignment. The first film began, and the room descended into an eerie silence. A grainy, handheld camera followed the relentless torment of a woman tied to a dilapidated metal bed frame. Her screams pierced the air, begging for mercy, as a hooded figure lurked in the shadows. The room was paralyzed, their senses overwhelmed by the woman's sheer terror. The brutality on-screen seemed almost too real, and Daniel's stomach churned as he watched. Minutes turned into an eternity, the woman's cries fading into silence. The film concluded with a black screen and the figure's heavy, labored breathing echoing in the room. An unsettling silence fell over the group as they collectively tried to process the grotesque spectacle they had witnessed. Over the next 3 weeks, the group endured a harrowing series of films, each one more disturbing than the last. The hooded figure's reign of terror continued, leaving a chilling imprint on their psyches. As the weeks passed, the group dwindled, unable to bear the gruesome nature of the films. Daniel finally reached out to Ben, the host's cousin and the source of their torment, expressing his discomfort and disgust. "Hey, Ben, can we move on from this torture? It's too much, man. I can't handle it anymore." Hours later, Ben responded, expressing regret for the films and promising a change. Daniel found comfort in knowing that the nightmare might soon end. But when he awoke one night to a small green light in the corner of his room, he realized that the horrors of the films were far from over. His arms and legs were bound to the posts of his bed, and panic set in. The dreaded, heavy breathing he had become all too familiar with echoed through the room. The hooded figure emerged, machete in hand, but Daniel's defiance was stronger than his fear. He taunted his assailant, questioning the purpose of this twisted reality. To his astonishment, the hooded figure spared him. Instead of ending his life, the figure cut his bonds, leaving Daniel bewildered and in shock. Paralyzed with fear, he lay in silence for hours, contemplating the inexplicable act of mercy. A week later, Daniel left Havenwood behind, fleeing the nightmarish ordeal that had enveloped him. He couldn't escape the memories, though, and the question of why he had been spared haunted him for years. 3 years passed, and Daniel remained tormented by the enigma of that fateful night. He couldn't forget the sinister films that had introduced him to a world of horror and dread. The experience left him scarred, his trust in the world forever shattered, and his nights haunted by the green light of his own personal horror story. 3 years had passed since Daniel fled Havenwood, but the nightmarish memories continued to cling to him like a shadowy specter. Each night, as he closed his eyes, the chilling whisper of the green light's eerie glow haunted his dreams. He had moved far away, changed his identity, and sought refuge in a new city. But the horrors of that night had left him with a deep-seated paranoia, and he could never shake the feeling that he was being watched, even in his seemingly peaceful new life. Despite his best efforts to forget, the enigma of why the hooded figure had spared him gnawed at his psyche. He had long given up on sleep and relied on caffeine to keep himself alert through the endless nights. One evening, while browsing the internet for news, he he stumbled upon an article that sent shivers down his spine. The headline read, "Series of gruesome murders stuns Havenwood." The article detailed a string of brutal, ritualistic killings in the very city he had escaped. The modus operandi eerily mirrored the horrors he had witnessed in those films. As he read further, the descriptions of the victims and the crimes bore a chilling resemblance to the scenes that had played out on his screen. The unsettling realization began to sink in: the hooded figure, or someone inspired by them, had resurfaced, and the nightmare was far from over. Terrified that he might be the next target, Daniel started receiving cryptic messages on his phone. Anonymous texts filled with disturbing imagery and threats. Each message seemed to hint that the horrors of Havenwood had followed him. Desperate for answers and fearing for his life, Daniel reached out to his only confidant, Sarah, who had also been part of the movie night group. She was living a quiet life, trying to forget the horrors of those films. But when she heard Daniel's plea for help, she agreed to meet him. They met in a secluded, dimly lit park, surrounded by towering trees. Sarah looked as haunted as he felt, but her determination was unwavering. She had been haunted by the memories of those films, and the re-emergence of the hooded figure had reignited her dread. Together, they decided to investigate the sinister connection between the films and the recent murders in Havenwood. Armed with only their wits, they delved into the dark underbelly of the city, retracing the steps that had led them to the brink of madness. Their quest for answers took them deep into a labyrinth of conspiracy and dark secrets. As they uncovered clues and followed a trail of terror, they soon realized that the horror they had witnessed was not a mere coincidence. They had unwittingly become pawns in a macabre game orchestrated by someone with a thirst for violence and a sinister motive. It became evident that the films were not just the product of film school students, but a part of a twisted plan that extended beyond their imagination. With each revelation, the hooded figure's enigma deepened, and the terror escalated. Sarah and Daniel found themselves pursued by a malevolent force that seemed one step ahead, always lurking in the shadows, and relentless in its pursuit. Their journey led them to an abandoned, decaying movie theater in the heart of Havenwood, a place where dark secrets had festered for decades. Inside, they discovered a hidden chamber filled with reels of films, each more horrifying than the last. These films held the key to unraveling the truth behind the hooded figure and their sinister agenda. As they delved deeper into the chilling revelations of the films, Sarah and Daniel realized they were racing against time. The malevolent force grew more relentless, and the body count in Havenwood continued to rise. The city was plunged into a nightmare, and they were its only hope for salvation. In the dark, eerie depths of the abandoned theater, Sarah and Daniel discovered the horrifying truth. The films they had watched were more than just a series of gruesome scenes, they were the work of a deranged cult. The cult, known as the Order of the Obsidian Veil, worshipped a deity of darkness and believed in the necessity of extreme violence and terror to appease their malevolent god. The chamber was a shrine, adorned with macabre relics and symbols, and it was evident that the hooded figure had been their high priest. The films were their unholy rituals, a way to broadcast their gruesome acts to an audience of unsuspecting viewers, like a dark sacrament. As they searched for a way to expose the cult's heinous activities and put an end to the reign of terror in Havenwood, the cult's relentless pursuit intensified. They were now marked for death, their every move tracked by the hooded figure's malevolent presence. Sarah and Daniel sought help from the authorities, but the cult's influence extended into the highest echelons of power, and they found themselves facing danger from within the very institutions meant to protect them. With time running out and the cult closing in, they hatched a daring plan. They would use the evidence they had gathered to expose the cult's existence to the world. The stakes were high, and the risks even higher. Their plan culminated in a desperate showdown at the heart of the cult's lair, the theater itself. The cult's high priest, the hooded figure, emerged from the shadows, wielding a bloodied machete. A terrifying, bone-chilling battle ensued, with Sarah and Daniel fighting for their lives against the embodiment of evil. In the end, good prevailed over darkness. The cult was exposed, its members arrested, and the reign of terror in Havenwood came to an end. But the scars of that horrific ordeal would forever haunt Sarah and Daniel. As they walked away from the abandoned theater, the nightmare that had once gripped their lives finally began to recede. But they knew that the hooded figure's malevolence would forever linger in their memories, a chilling reminder of the unfathomable darkness that dwells in the human heart. In the quiet aftermath, Sarah and Daniel found solace in their newfound bond and the strength they had discovered within themselves. They had faced true horror and emerged from the abyss, forever changed. And though they had survived, they knew that the evil they had encountered would forever cast a shadow over their lives, reminding them that the true terrors often hide in plain sight.
If you enjoyed the story, be sure to like and subscribe. See you next time.